Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of how to create a quick, great tone, where I take a look at some of the longer videos I've done and try to condense them down into something that's really easy to watch, manageable, and can give you maximum results for the time spent on it. So today we're talking about getting the most out of our reverbs when we're using them in a great tone. So let's go right over to HX Edit and not waste a second. Okay, so I have a typical template preset I have set up. I have a little blank space where I have my reverb block. Let's jump over to our reverbs. In this video, I'm gonna be focusing on most of the legacy reverbs, okay? I just don't have time to get into the more complex reverbs, although some of the things that I say here do apply to them as well. First thing you'll notice is we have different types of reverbs: plate, room, chamber, hall, echo, tile, cave, ducking, octo, 63 spring, and particle verb. Now you might ask, well, what are the difference between these? Well, there's some here that are actual, reverb simulations of a real room space. Things such as room, chamber, hall, cave, right? These are giving us representations of actual spaces that we're in that will create reverb. Things like plate and spring are more kind of artificially created, right? So a plate using an actual metal plate to create the reverb effects. Spring reverbs using actual springs that vibrate and create this kind of an echo sound. So to know which one you want to use, I find the best thing we can do is just pull up each one. Here I have a really quick little preset just based off of, I believe, the Deluxe Norm amp. And you know what I tell everybody is just simply crank up the decay and bring up the mix, let's say to 50%, and just listen to the sound of what these reverbs do. There you have the sound of the plate, room. You can tell very different characteristics. Chamber. Hall. Very long decay as is expected. Echo. Tile. Cave. Ducking. Where we hear the notes kind of ducking the reverb so it's quiet while we play, and then the reverb comes in stronger after. 63 spring. Spring. So now that we understand what these each kind of sound like, let's just stick on the plate and talk about the different parameters. Because what you'll notice is they all pretty much, for the most part, share the same parameters except for particle verb, and that's why we're not really discussing that today. So let's go up to the plate and we'll say, okay, decay. Well, what's the decay telling us? The decay telling us is how long we want that reverb to last, right? So if I bring this mix up to 50%, and I bring the decay way down, very short. If I bring it up all the way, it takes much longer for that reverb to decay. So we know what decay is. That's how long we want our reverb to kind of extend for. Pre-delay is one of the most interesting parameters and one of the most important, okay? Let's go with a really ridiculously high decay, and we'll go with a mix of 50%. With a pre-delay of 0, what's going to happen is the delay is going to kick in as soon as we hit a note. So it's almost going to even give the impression of engulfing our note or kind of masking our note. It's going to happen so quick. If I put that pre-delay up to its maximum of 200 milliseconds, I'm going to play the note's going to get to be the note, and then the reverb's going to come in 200 milliseconds later. Let's listen to the sound difference with this extreme reverb. Really kind of swallows the sound up, doesn't it? Pre-delay up to 200. If I just start that again, listen when I hit one note. Do you hear how you hear the note, then the reverb comes? So we can actually get away with using much bigger decays and bigger mix controls here by setting a longer pre-delay, which won't encompass that original note. That's going to help that initial note to kind of pop a little bit more. Versus having the pre-delay down on 0. You see how my initial note gets buried a little bit. Again, listen to it with the pre-delay up. So the pre-delay control, very important to being able to dial in your reverb the way that you want it to sound. Low cut and high cut, a lot of people get confused about this. We have low cuts and high cuts on our cab blocks and as EQ, right? And we think, oh no, well I don't want to cut too much of the high end because that's going to affect my tone. This low cut and high cut that are inside of the reverb are only going to cut the frequencies of the reverb itself and not your direct signal. So you can do some pretty interesting things here. If I take the low cut and high cut where it is and listen to the sound. Now, if I'm to take that high cut and turn it off, do you hear how much brighter the reverb sounds? If I take it all the way down, this really allows us to be able to tailor our reverbs to whatever sound we want. The reverb is no longer getting in the way of my direct tone as much either, but is much darker. Okay, if I was to bring my low cut all the way up so they're both at 500 Hertz, you're going to hear something really interesting happen here. We have a reverb that's very dark and out of the way of our direct sound, even though it's very heavy on the decay and mix. Versus if I have that low cut off and the high cut off. Now it engulfs my tone and takes over. So you can really kind of do some cool things here with that by really bringing these down closer together to let your tone breathe a little more. So you know, something like that, huge reverb, big pre-delay, and really limiting the high end. So we still get this impression of this nice reverb decaying off, but it's not engulfing our tone. So pre-delay, low cut, and high cut can be very important to getting a reverb that does what we want it to. Mix control, very simple. It mixes the full reverb sound with the direct tone, okay? Mix on 0, no reverb. Mix on 100, and you really hear the pre-delay there. If I put the pre-delay down to 0, you hear it as soon as I hit the strings. If I go up to 200 milliseconds, and let me just get rid of that reverb. Comes in later, right? If I come in the middle here somewhere, comes in a bit later. Okay, so the mix control, there was some controversy around recently, and I did a video about it. There's no difference if we pull our reverbs down to a split path. It doesn't do anything, blending it with the split or merge blocks. It's the same thing as just using the mix control. Okay, so don't waste a split path on that. It doesn't change the sound. And I proved that using null tests in a previous video. Maybe I'll put the link in the description below. Level is just going to be how much output level you want from our reverb. If you want to boost the signal or not, I usually leave that on 0. And trails are going to tell us that if we shut that off, This is kind of interesting. If I shut the block off, the reverb still keeps going. If I have trails off though, and I shut the block off, the reverb stops, okay? So all of those parameters I talked about are going to be exactly the same on room, chamber, hall, echo, tile. It's just the type of reverb is going to give us the sound we want. So by going through and educating ourselves about what each reverb sounds like, by just kind of maxing the decay up and listening with our ears, right? We gotta get an idea of what reverb will suit what situation, and then by understanding these controls we talked about today, it's going to really help us to be able to understand that we can shape the reverbs in the Helix very much. I did a video recently comparing Strymon reverbs versus Helix reverbs, and Helix matches up beautifully with them. So a lot of people complain about the reverbs. There's nothing wrong with the reverbs in the Helix. We just have to understand the parameters and how we can use those to shape our tone. I hope that was helpful to some of you folks. I know I rushed through it, but that's the point of this series. How to create a quick, great tone. I will put links in the description below to my original videos, which went much more in depth about the reverbs, and I kind of rambled on a little bit more for those who like the longer versions. But for now, I hope that helps some of you guys to get your reverbs up to speed on your presets, and I hope it helps you to get better results. Thank you guys so much. Please like the video and share it with anybody who you think would get use out of it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new videos out. I will be back soon with some more content. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again, and ciao for now.